Hey Bison Hawk, this is Barking Madly. Just had a couple of ideas after watching your videos and then seeing a couple with some interaction between Shall Not Be Infringed and myself. What I have up there on the board is kind of your hydroponics thing with a couple of tanks. One thing I got to thinking about is if you're going to have something that's going to have a time on, time off type of deal, you're going to need another tank that can function as a surge tank, because you're going to have water flowing and then water stopping, so you're going to need to, I don't think the system will be able to hold it all by itself, and then when you add to it having a little timer functioning, or timer function to it, I don't know that that's going to be feasible. So anyways, what I see happening is something like this. You have an upper reservoir here that functions as your timer. You've got a little float valve, kind of like what Mike was talking about. You can either have it turn off or turn on when the water gets filled up here to the top, and you have it controlled by a timer to run for a while, or you have this thing set to normally be running, and then when the value or when the water level gets too low, the float will turn the pump off, and then again that'll be set off. You'll either have an off time or you'll have an on time. You can do it either way. I'll post a link to the timer I found in McMaster-Carr. It's about $70. But at any rate, you can have this be like a 20 or 30 gallons. You can have, and then anyway, I'll go through it. You can have this be 20 or 30 gallons. It pumps water into your plants, and then just gravity functions, down, down, and down like you normally do. Then what you'll need to have at the bottom is another surge tank, basically, that this bottom tank won't be big enough to hold all the surplus water, so you'll just want a tank that all it does is hold water. And again, this one you can just use a simple float that when the water gets up to a certain level, a little switch kicks on and starts up a pump and pumps water up to your pressure tank, and it will function in I guess surges. It'll be on for a little bit, then it'll be off, and then just gravity's functioning. Anyway, this will be probably a smaller value pump, and it'll pump all the way up to a higher tank. And again, this is the one that's functioned on the timer. The height difference between these two is actually going to need to be determined by how much pressure you want and how quickly you want the tank to run out. Because if you saw what Mike was mentioning with those rule pumps, the higher it pumps, or the higher the head force it has to overcome, the lower the volume it'll pump. So you can actually control this. You can actually control the rate of water flow into your plants by how high up or how high or low this tank is. So you don't need to necessarily use a a voltage regulator or a speed regulator. You can just regulate that flow by choosing the size pump you want, and then by choosing how high up you want it to go. And again, this timer, this one I'll put the link to it. It's a 12-volt timer, and it's good for, I think it's rated for 10 million cycles. Then the only trick is finding the pumps and whatnot. Mike, the reason I was mentioning why I was worried about power cycling being an issue is, as you mentioned, these rules pumps are not designed to be on all the time. So they're designed to be off most of the time with the occasional kick on and whatnot. So I'm just thinking between having them go on an awful lot and having them turned on an awful lot, that might be more than they're used to. So, but at any rate, so again, you have, water starts off at the top, pumps down, trickles, accumulates in the lower accumulation tank or surge tank. This has a normal float control to it. You can do it a couple of different ways. You can have these floats turn on a relay, so that when this float gets turned on, it turns on a relay and it pumps down to it, and then you can have another float down here that as soon as it gets low enough, that powers, this powers a latching on relay, this powers a latching off relay. So when this kicks on, the pump will stay on until it reaches the lower level, and then when that reaches that lower level, that trips the relay into an off latch, so it stays off until the water level gets up to a higher level. And then this one, you have a float here, you can either have it as an on relay or an off relay that runs off a timer, and the timer then can get you set for 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off, however you want to do it, and then the cycle starts over. Anyway, I'll put in a link to the to the video I'm talking about, or to the relay, the timer relay I'm talking about. But at any rate, latching relays are fairly cheap, and especially if you want one this is running off, I assume, 12 volts, so they're all automotive latching. So, like I said, McMaster-Carr's a great place to find all this stuff. Anyway, later.